Imagine this. Munich, April 30th, 1945. American troops have stormed the city. The war in Europe is collapsing by the hour. Inside Adolf Hitler's private apartment, a place meant only for the Führer and his inner circle, soldiers open the door to the master bathroom, and there she is, a blonde woman, wrapped in steam, sitting calmly in Hitler's own bathtub, her face exhausted. Her boots, still covered with the mud and ashes of Dachau, lying on his pristine bath mat. Her military uniform hangs beside a portrait of the dictator himself. This is not a hallucination, not a piece of surrealist art. It is a real photograph, taken on the very day Hitler took his own life in Berlin. The woman in the bathtub is Lee Miller, model, muse, artist, and, by 1945, one of the most fearless war correspondents of World War II. That image shocked the world. Who was this woman? How did she get there? And how did a fashion model turn into a frontline witness to the collapse of the Third Reich? In this episode, we will follow her extraordinary journey from a traumatic childhood in America to the bohemian world of Paris, to the deserts of Egypt, all the way to the battlefields and concentration camps of Europe. We will uncover the woman behind the legend, the truth behind the photograph, and the life behind the myth. This is the story of Lee Miller, the model who became a war correspondent, and the woman who bathed in Hitler's tub on the day his empire fell. Lee Miller was born in 1907 in Poughkeepsie, New York. Her early life was marked by a devastating trauma. At just 8 years old, she was sexually assaulted. The experience shaped her personality profoundly, fueling her restlessness, her distrust, her fierce independence, and her lifelong desire to reclaim control over her own image and identity. Her father, Theodore Miller, was an engineer and an enthusiastic amateur photographer. He often photographed his daughter, sometimes in poses that would later raise eyebrows. Photography, for Lee, became intertwined with power. The power to control how she was seen and how she saw the world. As a teenager, Lee was rebellious, intelligent, and hungry for change. After several unsuccessful attempts at art school in the United States, she fled to Europe and landed in Paris. There she enrolled in a theater school. Acting, movement, and costume excited her. But the strict discipline did not. It wasn't long before she drifted into the company of artists, writers, avant-garde performers, and, most importantly, the surrealists. Paris became her first taste of freedom. Returning to New York in the late 1920s, Lee's life changed in a single, legendary moment. She stepped into traffic and was pulled back by none other than Condé Nast, the founder of Vogue. Struck by her beauty, he immediately offered her a modeling career. Lee became an overnight sensation. Her sharp features, long neck, and remarkable ability to hold still made her the ideal photographic subject. She was on the cover of Vogue within months, and top photographers fought for the chance to work with her. But Lee soon realized that she wanted the opposite side of the camera. Determined to become a photographer, Lee returned to Paris and sought out Man Ray, the surrealist master known for his experiments in light and shadow. Though Man Ray insisted he didn't take students, Lee simply showed up and refused to leave. Soon she became not only his apprentice, but his partner and collaborator. Together, they explored the boundaries of photography, especially the technique of solarization, a glowing reversal of tones that would become their signature. For Lee, Paris became home, and Man Ray became mentor, lover, and sometimes adversary. Their relationship was passionate and turbulent. Man Ray was a genius, but also possessive, temperamental, and insecure. He admired Lee's beauty, but sometimes feared her growing talent. Lee, however, refused to be confined to the role of a muse. She wanted authorship. She wanted credit. She wanted freedom. While she printed many of Man Ray's photographs, retouched negatives, and handled technical work, his name was often the only one that appeared on the final artwork. This imbalance pushed her to leave. Around this time came one of the most iconic images associated with Lee Miller: the lips. Man Ray enlarged a photograph of Lee's lips and placed them floating above a landscape. Sensual, surreal, haunting. The image became one of the defining symbols of the Surrealist movement. For Lee, the photograph represented both devotion and escape. A symbol of love transformed into myth. Unable to cope with the breakup, Man Ray created one of his most famous artworks, Indestructible Object. A metronome with a photograph of Lee's eye clipped to the pendulum, he would set it ticking to feel her presence, and then destroy it in fits of rage. Each time, he built it anew. For Lee, the work was both flattering and disturbing, a reminder that she needed distance and independence. After breaking with Man Ray, Lee remained in Paris, now as her own artist. She befriended Picasso, Jean Cocteau, and many leading figures of the avant-garde. She even appeared in Cocteau's film The Blood of a Poet. But her ambitions lay behind the camera. She was no longer satisfied being an object of art. She wanted to create it. In the early 1930s, Lee made a dramatic life change. She married a wealthy Egyptian businessman, Aziz Eloui Bey, and moved to Cairo. At first, she lived a life of luxury: servants, elegant parties, and long afternoons in a spacious villa. But the comforts soon felt suffocating. The desert, however, inspired her. Lee photographed surreal sandscapes, stark horizons, and abandoned buildings, images that hinted at her future documentary style returning to Europe. Lee met British artist and collector Roland Penrose, a central figure in the Surrealist movement. He became her partner, lover, and eventually her husband. With Penrose, she settled in London, just as the world was drifting toward war. As bombs fell during the London Blitz, Vogue transformed from a fashion magazine into a record of civilian resilience. Lee photographed women working in fire brigades, aircraft factories, hospitals, and bomb shelters. Her images revealed a different kind of beauty, the strength of ordinary people living through extraordinary times. They were raw, intimate, honest. In 1942, Lee Miller took a bold step. She obtained official accreditation as a war correspondent for the U.S. Army. Few women had ever held such a position. She traveled with troops, slept in trenches, endured bombardments, and witnessed the front lines firsthand. She wasn't just documenting the war, she was living it. Her wartime work was fearless and unfiltered. She photographed makeshift operating rooms, pilots ferrying aircraft to the front, women mechanics, bombed-out streets, and survivors emerging from rubble. Her style was uncompromising. No staged poses, no romanticism, only truth. On April 30th, 1945, Lee entered the Dachau concentration camp with American troops. What she saw there shattered her. Bodies, survivors barely alive, mass graves, the machinery of genocide. She took photographs not as an artist, but as a witness, to ensure the world would never be able to deny what happened. Later that day, she arrived in Munich, at Hitler's apartment. Exhausted, covered in camp dirt, She stepped into his bathroom, undressed, and took a bath. Her colleague David Sherman photographed the moment. A woman who had just walked through hell, cleansing herself in the home of the man responsible for it. The image became one of the most symbolic photographs of the war's end. After the war, Lee settled in England with Roland Penrose. They had a son, Anthony. But motherhood did not erase the horrors she had witnessed. She suffered from depression, alcoholism, and what we now recognize as PTSD. She rarely spoke about the war, and she almost completely stopped taking photographs. Surprisingly, Lee found solace in cooking. She experimented with recipes, created elaborate dinners, and wrote about food with creativity and humor. For a woman who had seen the worst of humanity, the kitchen became a place of comfort, a way to reconnect with life's simple pleasures. Despite Penrose's love and patience, their marriage went through difficult years. While his career flourished in the art world, Lee drifted between emotional highs and lows. Her past trauma, wartime memories, and battle with alcohol strained their relationship, yet Penrose remained devoted to her until the end. In her later life, Lee lived quietly in the English countryside. She rarely discussed her past achievements. She spoke even less about the war. On July 21, 1977, she died from cancer, largely forgotten by the public. Her legacy seemed lost. 3 decades after her death, her son Anthony climbed into the attic of their family home. There, hidden in dusty boxes, he discovered over 60,000 negatives, prints, letters, and documents. A lifetime of work, a chronicle of war, a portrait of an artist the world had overlooked. This discovery resurrected Lee Miller's legacy, revealing her as one of the most important photographers of the 20th century. Lee Miller's life is a story of resilience, a story of a woman who refused to be defined by tragedy, beauty, fame, or even war. Her photographs remain not just works of art, but acts of witness, acts of remembrance. Through them, she still speaks to us, clear, uncompromising, and unforgettable.